Other states are waging kind of wars against different, parts of their population. I think a lot of politicians just want to pick fights and get headlines, and whether it's picking a fight with Mickey Mouse or moving backwards to the early 1900s, it's so much easier to show up and to listen to people and know what really matters. So we're trying to make Michigan a place where every business can thrive and every person has rights and freedoms to make their own decisions and to live the life they want and be successful here in Michigan.
Who's saying that you can't do that? We're just saying you don't have to do it by shaking your junk in front of kids. I mean, it's kind of a big difference there, Big Gretch. Welcome back to the program, top of our third hour. Dana Loesch here with you, your lovable curmudgeon. I hate everybody equally. Not you guys, though. Let's everybody who's like in a thing that rhymes with the schmelt way. That we've covered a lot. We got our discussion with Jim Jordan that's going to be up on YouTube. So make sure you go check that out as well. And very insightful. They're uncovering a lot of stuff. Democrats hate him in that position. They do. Oh, they're not happy. They're not happy at all. But it's good for us. It's good for truth. I mean, honestly, just, to be just forthright about it. All right. A couple of things that we got to address. Oh, it's killing my soul. I don't want to have to talk about this, but I want to play off of what Big Gretch just said here. Because it's weird to see this. I gotta be honest. It's weird to see some of this stuff. So you have she's the reason that I wanted to play that specifically is because Big Gretch is out there running with this narrative that I see, and I told you that the left was running. They're trying to scare Republicans away from issues that are important to voters, like you could say cultural issues, I guess, like parents' rights, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Republicans are terrified of this. I had this conversation before with you, we all had this on the program, and talking about messaging on abortion. Because, obviously, and I don't think anyone the only people that are saying that they're going to try to take a Georgia or a Florida model and push that in Wisconsin are members of the flaccid right and the left, like Big Gretch. Those are the only people saying that. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that what works in Florida doesn't work in states like Wisconsin or California, and what works in California and Wisconsin doesn't work in states like Georgia and Florida, right? I mean, I think this is pretty obvious, particularly as it relates to messaging on abortion. And my thought has always been, well, where do the majority of Americans fall? Especially if this is a discussion about saving rights, because you don't want to run people off from the issue by looking as though you're not giving them an illusion of compromise. You got to start where the average American falls. 15 weeks. Beyond that, the average American thinks it's too extreme. And they are completely out of step with the Democrat Party that thinks it should be all the way up until birth and taxpayer funded. I'm not making this up. This is the repeat legislation that they have sponsored even as recently as 15 months ago, where they all had their names on it. Raphael Warnock was getting a lot of criticism during his campaign over it. That's what they support. That's what they go for. They think it's taxpayer funded on demand. That's what it should be. So obviously, I think that's kind of the messaging that Republicans should have going forward on this, because Georgia and Florida can do things that states like California, Michigan, and Wisconsin can't. And some of the messages in those states wouldn't work in Georgia and Florida. But what I don't like to see are Big Gretch and people like Kellyanne Conway saying the same thing. So Big Gretch is out there saying, oh, well, Republicans are spending all this time fighting culture war, et cetera, et cetera. And you have people like Kellyanne Conway who's saying the same. She said the same thing. She said that, but it's interesting. She's not talking about any of the other Republicans that are doing this. She's not mentioning the common ground that has been established. She's trying to find a way to put a division between Trump and DeSantis, whom they've identified as they're going after DeSantis more than they're going after Gavin Newsom and Joe Biden. And she's saying that, DeSantis, and by way of DeSantis, I'm going to interpret this as meaning other Republicans, are spending way too much time on culture wars. And this sort of reinforces everything the left has said, where they say, don't say gay. I'm going to tell you something. Positioning Trump to run to the left of some of these Republican governors is not the strategy that you want to take. Making him run to the left of DeSantis or other people. That's not the strategy that you really want. But that's what this is. They're saying that, oh, well, this is, we need to spend less time on these culture wars. And like I said, that reinforces everything the left says about the don't say gay and all this other stuff. The reason that we're in this position is because conservatives didn't and Republicans did not want to fight culture wars. They wanted to stay out of it. I mean, I know this because this was the big thing that I fought with Republicans about for so long. I literally got into shouting matches at CPAC with Republicans in the hallways. They thought that I was, oh, well, you're wanting to get... Politics is downstream from culture. Anyone who tells you otherwise has no business advising anybody in politics. Everything that ends up becoming policy starts culturally first. You don't think so? Look at CRT. Look at DEI. Look at the drag queen, all ages, sex and school stuff. Look at all of it. It all starts as a cultural issue because all policy begins, the germination is culture. This is basic 101 for people who are actually clued in. And I'm just, it's weird to me. There are some who've said, well, Trump gave that interview to Tucker Carlson where he was, praising Newsom. And, I don't know if I necessarily include that. I think that was a soundbite. I also think that he criticized him as well. But I mean, I know he has beef with Brian Kemp, but he was going at Brian Kemp at the expense of Republicans winning in Georgia and actually said that, Stacey Abrams might be, I have the video of it. He said she might be better than having your existing governor. The reason that I'm pointing this out is because I don't like to see people who have done some good things like shoot themselves in the foot with bad strategy. I am so competitive against Democrats that I don't want it to look like we don't have a number of people who aren't really good contenders. And we're actually hurting ourselves by running stupid primaries. I'm all for candidates like duking it out, but don't be stupid about it. I mean, good grief. Don't see who can run to the further left of a candidate that you think might be the biggest challenge. That is not the way to do it. Trump should be trying to out-conservative Ron DeSantis, not running to the left of him. And this abortion thing is part of this. Students for Life they're livid. Susan B. Anthony pro-life is livid. LifeSite News is livid. The pro-life movement is dropping bombs right now. SBA pro-life, because this is all about, they're accusing Trump of walking away from pro-life because he had said, now let me put this in context. He was talking about how there was a Washington Post piece. They reached out to his campaign and his campaign responded and said that, they believe that, he believes that, as the Supreme Court said, that this is a states' rights issue for life. Now, I understand what he's saying because that was the argument that a lot of people were making against Lindsey Graham, who after the Supreme Court made that decision, Lindsey Graham decided to try to snatch, defeat from the jaws of victory. And he wanted to make like a federal law about abortion before the ink had even dried on this decision. And everyone was saying this is right before a midterm election. Slow your roll for a second. But there's a difference in saying that something's right before a midterm election and also let's revisit this when it's a little bit more convenient for us electorally, right? So here's the issue. All of this is predicated upon a perceived constitutional right to abortion as birth control, right? That's what this is abortion as birth control. And that's what Roe v. Wade was arguing, is that there was a constitutional right to this when there wasn't. And so the argument that SBA and Students for Life and others that they are making is that, well, if you're going to try to pass this off because you're afraid to address the issue as a states' rights issue, then what other issues pursuant to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are you going to say, oh, no, that's a states' rights issue? I understand the argument totally. I also understand the fear that some Republicans have because they don't feel like they can message adequately. But the solution to that isn't to run away from the fight. The solution to that is to develop better messaging.